get a few. Good evening, everyone there. We can see you all coming in. You're most welcome to turn your cameras on. I assume they can. You can't turn them on. What's happened in the settings? I will get to that. Manage event. Manage options. I am just returning it on. It was turned on earlier. I have pressed join, so if people could try now, and those lovely people messaging me. I've turned them on right now, so hopefully it goes. Don't know why that happens on Teams. How are we going? Is anyone else able to turn it on?
Yeah, try that, Lou. See if it'll reconnect.
Because you can see that there it says turn on and meeting options. Apply, done. Some options may be locked. Why is that? No, that's bypassing the lobby. We're sorry, everybody.
I'm just trying through. I can go through individually and allow people's cameras, so I'm just going to go.
Okay, thank you.
And do that now. Hey, Kelly.
Okay,
we will leave people's mics off for now. If you do, either raise your hand or if you have a question, put it into the Q&A. Then at that point, we will allow your mic to come on. Obviously, we don't want everybody to have access to the mics because while we're presenting, it can mean that people talk over or we lose important information. So if you have something you want to ask or go through, raise your hand or put it into the Q&A and we will endeavour to get to it throughout the evening.
So you're just clicking on everybody and then going through, you've done it?
Yeah, I've got most people now, should have had their cameras allowed, and I'll just keep an eye on that and we'll go through.
Yes, we're just going through and doing them one by one.
I can see Lou now. Hey, Lou. But yes, as I said, mic's going to be disabled. And if you do have a question, we will raise hands and then allow you to speak. That's just to allow us to get through the presentation a lot easier. Now, are we just waiting for Will to join us?
Should be. So everyone else's cameras have been enabled. Allow camera.
Okay, we'll just give it a few more minutes and see. Wait for our illustrious board chair.
Simon,
request
join.
Will's trying to join.
I've just Is Dana in?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for running a little bit late. My technology skills were tested, but thankfully Lizzie came to the rescue and dialed me in.
I think and we've just had a few hiccups today. The cameras are disabled, so whew,
I can see some faces.
Todd's going through and allowing everybody.
Okay, brilliant. So Lizzie, if you bring the pack up, why don't we start to make a start? So good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for making time for this important discussion. I'm Will Moffat. I'm the board chair, and I'm joined today by some of my fellow board members. Todd Wilkin, I can see Dina there. Who else have we got? We should have Kelly, do we? Maybe say hello if you're on screen now. I've lost all the faces.
I did see Kelly earlier.
I'm sure we'll be hearing from them a little later on. And of course, we've got our Chief Executive, Lizzie, who's worked very hard on some of this content and has been working with you all on your feedback.
And we have Lorraine Phillips as well.
We do have Lorraine. Evening, Lorraine. Thank you for taking time out of your evening. All right. The purpose of today is to walk you through the process that we're currently going through to renew our constitution. We'll talk a little bit about why we're doing that. We'll talk a little bit about what our current thinking and approach has been to creating a new constitution and the direction we're heading in. But ultimately, we want to provide you all an opportunity to feed back. This is very much a membership-driven organisation. All of us here on the board certainly don't do it for the money, as there is none. So we really want to make sure that this process is one that works for you, and one that you guys have had a really good opportunity to feed into. So Lizzie, is there any housekeeping that I've missed around Q&A and things like that?
No, I don't think so. We'll be getting later on to where they can find all the resources on the website and the next links later in the slideshow.
And for questions as we go, are we going to be using the chat field or the Q&A field?
Todd is in charge of that. So Todd, where would you like those questions?
The preference would be to get them in the Q&A because that keeps them separate from our chats and everything else. And it does mean that during the evening, I can pop in there if there are items, we can answer them as we move along. But if you can't get the Q&A to work, then throw it into the chat and I will answer it, or one of us will answer it there, or bring it up for everybody to chat to.
Awesome. Okay, Lizzie, shall we carry on? Okay, so some of you may be aware and involved in a number of other incorporated societies, and everyone from sports organisations, community organisations around New Zealand are all impacted by a recent legislative update. So the government, in their wisdom, decided that the 100-year-old Act needed a bit of an update. And what that means for us and a number of organisations like us is that we must update our constitutions to comply with the new regulations. Now, we've got an opportunity, or we're basically compelled to go through this process. But in doing so, we think we've got an opportunity to actually update the way we run and shape our organisation and the way we distribute power and structure throughout the New Zealand Pony Club. So there's a couple of things that we've looked at while we're doing this. What does our organisation look like at the moment? Where is activity performed? Where are our members? And where's a lot of the work being done? So we know from talking to a lot of you up and down the country that there's a tremendous amount of administration burden within the structure and layers of the organisation. We know that there's a lot of hardworking people out there and a lot of really passionate people that actually just want to see kids and ponies out there learning and having some fun. So as much as we can, we want the Constitution to enable that. So during this process, while we're going through it for, to meet compliance, we want to make sure that we're leveraging the opportunity to make sure that we're future-proofing ourselves and enabling all of our members to do the great work and share the great community and learning that can be Pony Club. And Lizzie, shall we tick over to the next one unless someone wants to build on that? No, cool. So there's a bit of a network of documentation, and anyone who's been through our website or been through our resources will know that can be a bit of a web to untangle. The Constitution that we're talking about first in the sequence is the NZPCA Constitution. So that is the overarching document that distributes power and describes the organisation's membership structure. It is basically the rules for making rules and the rules for the rule makers. So it governs how the board works, how the CE is appointed, how voting and AGMs and all that kind of organisational mechanics operates. Underneath the national constitution, you might be familiar with your local branch constitution. If you're involved at club and area levels, they have constitutions as well. And sitting alongside them is our general regulations, which go into kind of more prescriptive detail around how the organisation operates, how events operate, how disputes are dealt with, and a number of different things that give members guidance on how we conduct our business in the organisation. So as I said, for compliance, we have to update our constitution, and then we have to update any other constitutions that are going to be incorporated societies. So the first thing to do is update the national constitution, and we're hoping to do that in August at our AGM, which is being held in Christchurch. We are going to come back to a timeline right at the end, so we're just orientating you on the process that we're going through, and then Lizzie's going to take you through a sort of month-by-month view on what the next 12 months sort of looks like. But we want to update and vote in a new constitution for the national body at the 3rd of August AGM in Christchurch. The national organisation will then release templates for the member groups to go out, hold their SGMs, vote in, and basically make live new compliant constitutions. In the background, we'll be updating the membership general regulations and bylaws and all our policies and resources to make sure they're all in sync. All these documents obviously kind of speak and reference to each other, so we need to make sure that that's all in harmony. We're targeting to get the kind of signed and voted new constitutions back from the current clubs and branches by March 1st. That way NZPCA has got time to review and make sure that everything's all tickety-boo. And then by the April 5th deadline of 2026, all of our incorporated societies within the organisation are compliant and ready to go for the deadline which the Act sets out, that is 5th of April. So appreciate that's an absolute information dump, and I've potentially rambled a little bit longer on that than we probably need to, but Lizzie will come back to you at the end with a much clearer guide on the next few months and how that'll work getting us to April 5.
Can I just add in there, just building on that? So within the general regulations, I think you touched on it, but that is how our events run. So our constitutions being changed doesn't, at this stage, yes, there will be changes, affect how you do your certificates or how you do the events, the national events, your area events, and all of those things, or how riders are doing their A&H. That is not part of the Constitution. They're the regulations, those event regulations, and they will change, as Will said, as we get through.
Yeah, really good point, Lizzie. I think that takes us nicely into the next slide.
Oh, just try to get Simon the invite. There we go.
Oh gosh, Mr. Bennett, late and locked out. Maybe we should leave him there. Okay, moving on. So as Lizzie said, there's a number of things that the Constitution is not, and I might actually lean on Todd in a minute here, our resident lawyer, to talk through what it is and what it provides the organisation and actually what it doesn't. So it is our overarching governance document. I like to think of it as kind of the skeleton that lays out kind of the backbone of the organisation, mechanically how it works. So those things that I talked about earlier, the board, the CE, voting, AGMs, those kind of bare minimums for our organisation to be able to function. But what it doesn't do is provide the kind of localized rules and specifics for your club, for events that you're all familiar with, specific detail around disputes and things like that. That's really covered by the general regulations, which are bylaws of the Constitution. And the Constitution basically gives the legal framework for us to be able to go and set those laws or those bylaws.
Yeah, I think the key thing for people to be aware of when we're talking about the Constitution, we're talking about how the organisation makes its rules, and runs its operations. So if we look at this Constitution and the way, if you think about Pony Club has been run, a lot of the power sits with the board and its members. So the creation of the general regs and the bylaws happen on delegated authority from the board, and the key power in the Constitution for the members is they have the power to vote on board members and vote off board members as things go on. So if you're unhappy with a decision or a process, the Constitution allows you to raise at an annual general meeting and put a vote of no confidence into the board. That's where the Constitution is. It's not about saying how we will select teams or how we will deal with online bullying or how we will deal with social media, because those are all parts of our general regs and our bylaws and our policies and our procedures. So if you think about it, this is the backbone. And it talks with how a decision will be made, what powers the board will have, what powers the board won't have. And as that moves down through the organisation, it will be what powers the club has, what powers the club doesn't have. That's where the big difference is, I think, in people's understandings. So what are we looking for in here? The key things that we want to make sure around the Constitution review when we're looking at this: are you comfortable with the structure of the organisation and how it flows? Are you comfortable with your ability to oversee and challenge the board on decisions that the board makes? Because that's what the Constitution allows you to do. And so that's where we need to get everybody comfortable. We have largely kept these the same, and we have largely followed the guidance from Sport New Zealand because we feel it's most appropriate to be consistent across sporting bodies throughout New Zealand. We don't require anything bespoke. We're not that special. From a governance side, we need to make sure that we're doing exactly what everyone else does, so that there's comparability and people can understand as they move between sporting bodies, we have a very similar framework for operations. That's what our Constitution is providing.
Yeah, nice summary there, Todd. I think what I'll do is let's head over to the next slide, but I'll just ask Kelly, she's a fellow board member and Pony Club mum, to just bring to life a little bit of thinking behind behind some of our proposed changes, and sort of try and bring to life the experience that we're hearing a number of our Pony Club parents or Pony Club community members are experiencing at the moment.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, we had a little video for the other week, but we had some technical issues, so we couldn't actually get it to work this time. But there's no doubt about it, as a Pony Club parent and the Pony Club parents that we talk to on a regular basis, there is a constant pressure on time in all our lives, basically. So we start out kind of at the beginning and really enjoying Pony Club, and actually having plenty of time to give it all our enthusiasm and all our fun, basically. And then as time goes on, we get more and more involved. And we have to, we do that because we have to give opportunities. We want to be there and help our branch and help our club and help our area to give opportunities to our riders. But sometimes the balance gets a little bit offset as such. And therefore, we are spending, 3 or 4 nights, some weeks at meetings for Pony Club, which can impact on what we do at home with our riders and our kids. We don't get enough time to do that. So therefore, the Constitution is the update and the arrangement. We're trying to make the volunteer workload on our parents that are trying to do everything to give their kids opportunities more sustainable, not only now but also into the future.
Well put. I think there'll be a number of people on the call that can resonate with that, Kelly.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about our proposed changes, some of you may have read a draft constitution that we've put out there. The process that we're going through at the moment is one of consultation. So we've put that out there. It's in no ways or means final. It is leading up to that vote at the August AGM. But we can kind of broadly set the changes down to 3 key areas. We're going to deep dive mostly into the first area around membership. That seems to be where people are showing the most engagement or most interest. There's a mechanical change around officers, which we'll speak a little bit about as well. And then there's a disputes process, which really just needs a freshen up. So across our organisation, there's unfortunately a number of disputes that come up. Having a really clear process that gives rise to swift, natural justice is really what what best practice tells us. We've got a template from Sport New Zealand that should be familiar for any of you that are involved with other sports, and we really ought to try and adopt that into our organisation. So I think first of all, we'll spend a little bit of time on the layers of Pony Club and the membership of our national organisation. So we've got a couple of slides on this. Shall we go into the first one, which talks about the layers of Pony Club? Now, Lizzie, I might just default to you to talk about our current structure and the layers that we already have. You live and breathe this every day, so no one probably better qualified.
Oh, well, there's some very knowledgeable people here that have been around for a very long time. So thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. So as you know, Pony Club is an organisation with 4 layers. So we have, at the top layer, we have our head office, and then right down the lowest level is our clubs and our branches. So our clubs without branches and our branches, and that's where our riders go for their regular instruction. So they are the 2 areas of Pony Club where The branches is where lots of people, they start off and they work their way up and have more experience as they go up as a rider. So we've got New Zealand Pony Club at the top, and then you're all divided into 15 geographical areas. It used to be 16 when I was growing up, and then the merge of Gisborne Wairoa into the Hawke's Bay in the 2000s and about 14s, 15s. So we've got our 15 areas, 4 in the South Island and 11 in the North Island. And under that we have 2 branches. We have the clubs without branches, and we have the clubs. Now, clubs are then underneath that are made up of different branches. So over on this side in our examples, we've got New Zealand Pony Club as the national office, and our area is Otago Southland. Now, we chose Otago Southland, Clyde in particular, and Te Puke because Kelly, who was working with me, is from Otago Southland, and I'm from the Bay of Plenty. So we've got Otago Southland, and under Otago Southland, the club with lots of branches is Central Otago. And so Central Otago, Kelly, has how many branches? I forgot to look that up today. 4 or 5?
5 branches in Central Otago.
And of which one is Clyde.
Yep.
On the other side, we have got an example of, in the Bay of Plenty, we've got the NZPCA head office, area being Bay of Plenty, and then we've got Te Puke, which is a club without branches, and it's by itself on its own with no one underneath it. So that is how Pony Club is currently structured. So in the club layer, which includes clubs with branches underneath and clubs without branches, currently we have 87, and there are 138 branches underneath those clubs. And that's how it goes throughout New Zealand. Shall I go to the next slide?
Thanks, Lizzie. Sorry, I just muted myself.
So the proposed, this is what would happen, or do you want to talk about this first, Will?
Yeah, sure. I'll just give a brief open, Lizzie, and then I'm sure you'll fill in all the pieces that I miss out. So our original thinking when we came to talk about the membership structure of Pony Club, we spent a good amount of time on this because we think it's really important to get right, and this is, probably one of the most important things to get your feedback on. But we sat down as a board after, talking to our own local areas and pony clubs, talking to some of our senior leaders in Pony Club, and some of the known faces around the organisation. What we found was that the most important part is where activity and where the members actually are. So while there's kind of a lot of power and a lot of decisions being made at the New Zealand, at the area, and even at the club level, most of the most of the buzz around Pony Club is at the branch level, or the branch without the club without branches. So this is where people go to rallies. This is where people get their certificates. This is where people learn and actually develop, which is really core to our purpose. So the board thought the best place to start and the best place to kind of nurture is that club, or that currently known as branch network. So we don't want to disrupt that too much, apart from a naming convention. So I understand it's slightly confusing because we do have a different layer currently called clubs, but going forward, for simplicity's sake, we would like to call that local level a club, just like you do with your local rugby club. It's the place where you perform your activity, perform your sport, you come together with your community, and then you enjoy your activity. So the local branches, the local places where you go, I think someone's agreeing with me on the chat, which is brilliant. So the place where you go to do your activity is your club, and that's kind of where we started, and we don't want to disrupt it much more than that. Above those clubs, at the moment, we've got 2 layers of basically administration. What we're thinking is that, on a spectrum of options, 1 layer of administration above that and between the national body feels like the right level of kind of governance. There's arguments either way. Obviously, at the moment, we've got 2 structures. There's a number of people who've fed back and said, why do you need any at all? But on the balance of things, we're kind of come to the conclusion that 1 above and the configuration of that 1 above, we'll talk to you a little bit more about in a moment, but 1 above, which we're calling, as a placeholder name, I will add, a cluster. Please drop any suggestions for the naming convention of cluster in the chat. We've had plenty of feedback about it, but not a lot of good suggestions. So looking for some creative options in the naming space. But basically what that means is that when you've got a group of like-minded clubs who want to come together, share resources, assets, activity, they've got a central body and a governance structure that will come together and coordinate that for them, be the broach between clubs, between clusters, and between the national body as well. So Lizzie, again, I've kind of just word vomited. If you could bring it to life with a couple of examples and fill in any gaps.
Absolutely.
I've made.
Absolutely. So we know that once we take you back to the grassroots level, it will be approximately 184 clubs. That's counting all the current branches and clubs without branches. It's approximately 184. We do know that there will be changes, and some are getting to that point that they're not constitutional as in numbers. And important to say here, because I've been asked, what is the number? A number of a club or a branch is 15 members, of which 8 are to be adults. So here we've just used our example again. So we've got New Zealand Pony Club, and this middle intermediate layer, we are going to, these 2 layers, we're going to come and actually do webinars with you. So you can design these with us, but these are just what Kelly and I put on here. So Clyde would become the club, and its intermediate level could be Otago, it could be Central Otago, or it could still be Otago Southland, depending on what that area / region decided. But it's only got the 2 layers going, 1 layer in between the grassroots and the national office. Same over here in the Bay of Plenty, because this one already only had 1 layer, and that could be, we've got Te Puke, and then it could be, geographically, it could be Eastern Bay, or it could be the Bay of Plenty to New Zealand Pony Club. Now, it's really important that we come and work with you. So it's going to be on the timeline coming up a little bit later about what your area looks like, because Google Maps does not allow me to see things like mountain ranges, big rivers, gorges. I can only, I'm not a map expert. So these layers and what they look like, they are our next round of consultation beginning in May. I'll just go to the next, oh no, I'll go back one. There we go. So we've just put them together here so you could see what would happen to Clyde. Instead of being 4 layers of Pony Club, it is now 3. Bay of Plenty, Te Puke, it was already 3, but it's just a slight change there to the area above.
Just on there quickly, I've had a couple of things in there. So Sue's region makes the most sense. We did talk about region as an option in there, but then that got confusing in some parts where we weren't following regional boundaries, and so that created a bit more confusion amongst some people when we were testing that one. Because it also didn't follow. People thought regions, they thought about their normal region that they were sitting in, and then they went, well, actually, that doesn't work because these clubs, although they're part of that region, would not naturally follow that route. So we are still sort of thinking about it. Other options coming up. Hub seems to be getting pushed quite heavily from Waitemata Rodney. Well, I think we'll probably end up having to do a little, possibly a little electronic vote out to everyone just to go to see what people's feelings are with some of these options before we go too much further. How many intermediate layer clusters, hubs, regions, whatever can NZPCA realistically manage was a question from Erica. That's kind of open at the moment. We can manage more than the 13 odd areas that we've got at the moment, but we can't manage, or 15 areas, but we can't manage 138 branches. So it's somewhere in between those two will probably be where we land, and I think that's going to be a few conversations. As Lizzie's already mentioned, we're going to be talking with the areas and seeking advice from them about how their parts of the world will possibly come together.
Sorry, Todd.
The other question on there was, does NZPCA manage us or do we manage ourselves? It's going to be a joint process for us to go through.
Just picking up on that, how many can we realistically manage? I think the more important question that'll form the configuration of the clusters, or whatever we're going to call it. I did have a giggle at Marge's use of not the C word.
She loves cluster. I know she does.
I think the real question is, how many clubs can a cluster or a hub manage? Right, so that'll be the question that we're going out to consult on next. In your geography, how many clubs does it make sense to group together and make an administrative layer? The New Zealand Pony Club, we'll equip ourselves to be able to deal with the fallout of that. So that layer between the national body and the administrative layer, we'll make sure we fix ourselves up to do that. But what we ultimately want to do is have, the activity layer or the grassroots layer uninterrupted, and then have the next layer above that best suited to kind of support the clubs underneath them. And then however many that springs up in the second layer across the country, New Zealand Pony Club will make sure we fix ourselves to make sure we're equipped to deal with that. Lizzie's got a hand up.
Yeah, I have. So currently, I think it's a mixture. I don't manage you all. You self-manage, and I'm there. The head office is there for guidance, and also we're watching, we're listening, we're reflecting, we're hearing. So those clusters, intermediate levels, regions, those people will still be coordinating. Instead of it being an area forum, they'll still have the opportunities to have forums. We will still have the same communication, network issues, highlights. We're just looking, really, it's the intermediate layer of your volunteer burnout that we've been hearing about.
And what we may find, and this is the reason we haven't been able to come up with a single answer, some existing areas may roll over into clusters. All of their clubs and branches may go, actually, we really like the way this works, and that's what happens. It doesn't mean it has to always be that way, but that's the way it could be from April. Now, others, and this is to your question, Emma, saying some of these areas will struggle to bridge. Absolutely. And that's why we've got to consult, because we can't dictate. We need to speak to you guys and go, right, who does sit where? How will be best for your members to work? Because this is a member-led change. And so the big thing for us is how is it going to be best for your clubs and your club's members to interact with Pony Club and get the most out of Pony Club with the least amount of administrative burden?
I've got even more from that there, Todd, because I've actually had emails from clubs that are on the boundaries of places and saying, is this our opportunity to move from one area to another area? Because geographically, when they were set up almost 80 years ago, because we're 80 next year, there wasn't the roadworks or there wasn't the construction that is now there. So, this is the opportunity to have those conversations as well, to look at, are you in the right place? Do some of you move around a little bit because your regions have changed?
And we've also had some members come to us and talk to us about having one club that administers over 3 venues as such in their area. So that because they've got limited number of riders. So that was something that we're really interested in, that club.
And Sue's just asked a question here. Could a large number of clubs in a cluster mean that decisions never be agreed on? Canterbury can have 12 plus clubs represented at a meeting. Is there likely to be a maximum number of clubs per cluster? No, there isn't going to be a maximum number of clubs per cluster. Certain areas will have more than that number of clubs in there. It's still going to be governed by the Constitution, and the Constitution is 50% of votes to pass something, 75% for a major change. Now, that we would not expect everybody to agree with every decision. That's not how democracy works. As long as we can get a majority and we can have a good discussion, we're not too worried. The key thing for us is people being heard. If we hear that in that area there's a certain club or person that's running it as a dictatorship, then the Constitution comes into play and things change. But there won't be a maximum number of clubs per cluster.
I would like to reiterate what Louise has just put in as her comment Lou has put on. We know that one size will not fit all, and that is why part of our next consultation starting May, which I'll go through on the timetable, is going to be open to everyone, but every webinar will be focused on one area or region with different scenarios of modelling so they can go away and chat and decide. I think I missed out that slide. I did. Oops. Oh, that slide about what the purpose of the intermediate layer was. Oops.
And this is actually incredibly important.
Yeah, good way to round out this section. Todd, do you want to take us through?
Yeah, so the key things in here, these clusters, there's a reason that we want the cluster and there's a reason that we want it to be an incorporated society. And again, this comes to Lou's comment, one size may not fit everyone. There are some parts of our organisation where there's assets owned in common, or there's common owned assets, common funding, or the likes. With those items, they need an incorporated society to own them, and that's one of the key things that the cluster is going to be doing. It will continue to do similar sorts of stuff to your existing areas and districts if you do them around inter-club, inter-cluster activities. But the main one is going to be, it's a forum for committee members and people, particularly in our clubs, where we'll have generally higher turnover of our committee members, to have an opportunity to search for share best practice, get support, and understand what it really means to run a Pony Club organisation. So it's that level that allows for better camaraderie, better sharing of best practice, better sharing of information, and pointing people to where information is available on our website and within Pony Club. That's one of the key things about having those levels as we move forward. So, well, do you have anything on there you want to add, Lizzie?
No, I think that's
No,
a pretty good summary.
I've
Go
had
ahead,
a few
Lizzie.
questions. Sorry, I've had a few questions, and the questions about assets and how assets would be shared and all of that. That would be decided once the structure of your area and region is decided. But it's not about New Zealand Pony Club. I've had a few people comment on the Plunket sagas a few years ago. That is definitely not. We're not going to be taking your assets. If you decide it's an area that you wanted in a trust account, we can help you with trust accounts. But it's not about the assets coming upwards to New Zealand Pony Club. The assets stay with your members and your people.
And that's something that's one of the biggest impacts of the change management that'll have to be put across this is there are a number of very wealthy clubs and branches. Now the treatment of all those assets will have to be on a case-by-case basis, and the NZPCA will help provide a framework and a support for those going through that change. But ultimately, the proceeds or the benefit of everything currently held for members by that entity will have to be maintained for the benefit of the members of that entity in that area, regardless of some structure or naming convention change that happens.
That's a legislative requirement. The key thing on here, so we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A around limiting the change bank accounts as an issue, and if current branches have raised funds to purchase expensive equipment, does the new structure mean the area lose access to it? Ownership of those assets will remain where they are. Remember, an incorporated society is set up to hold assets on behalf of its members. And it's a key thing on there for these ones. That's our purpose in there. What we want to make sure is with those assets, they go back to, they stay in the areas, they stay in the clubs that are relevant to them. So if somebody has bought an expensive piece of equipment that is currently used across an area and area are funded for it, then the new cluster should take over the ownership of that and keep it for those to go through. Keeping in mind that at the end of all this, everything rolls up to New Zealand Pony Club Association. It's owned nationally by all of us for all of our members. And for the benefit of our members, we can't we can't do anything to change that, and that's a legal requirement, is to make sure that any assets in these lower clubs, if those clubs fail, fall over, those assets move up to the national office, and that's a legislative requirement under the Incorporated Societies Act.
There's
Todd?
a couple of questions there, Todd, in Q&A.
Yeah. So I've just gone through so we talked about the current branches raised funds, and we've talked about limiting the change. It's just Marge's one. Will it be voted on in its entirety, or will it be broken down to sections?
I think that's the purpose of this consultation, right? Is to get one proposal put forward, and one that's going to be reasonably acceptable. I don't think there'll be any proposal that'll be acceptable to everyone, but the purpose of us being overly available, overly consultative during this process is to get something together, so that come the 3rd of August, we're going to put something to the membership.
When we get to the timeline, Marge, we're not going to vote section by section on the Constitution, and the reason for that is that would make it impossible for us to actually get a constitution across the line and by the deadline. The purpose of the consultation is to, as Will said, nail all of these questions now, agree on the framework, and have one document that's approved. because it must be approved. What we end up with must be approved in August. Otherwise, rolling out the next level and the next level by the April deadline becomes impossible.
So we're asking for feedback. You can send feedback, particularly if there are particular things that are troubling or you we will all need more consideration, and I can pass that on to the board for anyone.
And we'll go through that again at the end, the feedback process and the consultation process.
Okay.
Shall we jump to the next section?
Where we're talking officers now.
Thanks. So a good discussion there on probably the most significant change that's being proposed in the new constitution, the structure and layers of our membership. There's some great questions coming through the Q&A, and we can get back to those a little later. The second change that's probably not as material, but certainly a mechanical change for the operation of some of our key events like the AGM, is the disestablishment of the presidential positions. I have to broach, first of all, that we've had some really wonderful presidents in the past and still do. David and Wendy do a terrible lot for the organisation, and we certainly want to acknowledge that. And we've consulted with both of them on, the future of those two positions, and they're on board with our way of thinking that the responsibilities or constitutional responsibilities that those positions currently hold. So the president chairing the AGM is probably better placed with the chair of the board in a kind of modern constitution, and the CE becomes the national officer. That's more of a official position to be posted with the registry office. The piece probably more for the board to go and enable after this constitutional process is actually to make sure that the ceremonial role, which is most of the work that the presidential folks do, so being present, turning up to events, making sure that the membership has a line of access to someone in a senior position, and that they're seen and heard throughout the organisation. We want to make sure that that is maintained. And realistically, in the constitution of old and of new, the patron has a really strong role to play there. So we'll have a look about making sure that we're appointing one or two or three really good patrons into that role to make sure that there's a good ceremonial presence and representation of a respected few people that's filters through the organisation. Those are the changes, in terms of officers that the new constitution is providing. We'll deep dive a little bit more onto the disputes process, which I think we have some material on, Lizzie. Someone got a question, a very long discussion on this.
Just on that, Mandy, we had a long discussion on the royal ceremonies concerned around the independence from the board. Where the independence comes in, the board is meant to be independent from the chief executive, and the board is your elected representatives of Pony Club. If you feel that you need a watchdog over the board, then you haven't elected the right board. I think it's more important that people realise when you're electing myself, Will, Kelly, Dina, these are the people you want to make decisions for you. If you do not feel that we are the right people to be making decisions for you, do not elect us. Put up a vote of no confidence, because it's incredibly important that that's the process that's maintained. Having another person over the top to keep an eye on the board is, to be fair, a waste of money for the association. If we can't get our membership right, then and if we can't get your elected representatives right, then that's where we need to focus. Erica, does this mean the CE is now appointed by the board and not elected by the members? The CE is not elected by the members. It never has been. It never will be. The CE is appointed by the board. They are not up for a vote at the AGM. They are an employee of the Pony Club, and as a result, the board has the final say on the CE. If you're unhappy with the CE, you put a vote of no confidence in the board and its operations. That is how the Constitution is expected to work. The key thing to keep in mind here is a lot of the processes that have been brought into the Incorporated Societies Act are those present in the Companies Act, with the idea being that your board of your incorporated society has the same obligations and risks as your board of a commercial entity, and we have the responsibility to our members that a board of a commercial entity has to its shareholders. That's where the AGM becomes one of the most important meetings in the organisation, because that is the opportunity for the members to speak directly to the board, to challenge their decisions and to put votes to the floor. These are all things that the Constitution covers and requires. It's the process for electing a board member, it's the process for disputing a decision of the board, it's the process for rolling boards or board members if you're unhappy. Lou, you said in here it's been a historic concern in the past. Absolutely, because we haven't managed that communication with our members and our processes correctly. And that's where my big thing and at the current board's biggest focus is to make sure, one, that our Constitution protects our members, and two, that our Constitution allows our members' voices to be heard.
I think the original question around independence is an interesting one. I'm not really sure about independence from what. If you think about what the change is actually proposing, the only functional power that changes is, rather than the president chairing the AGM, the board chair will chair the AGM, which is a pretty mechanical kind of formality. The president currently attends 2 board meetings a year, and is invited to do so to kind of share feedback from the membership and kind of give a sense of things that are happening on the ground. But the board themselves is composed of a majority of member electees and a minority of independent appointees, which is, as Todd noted, a pretty common balance across incorporated societies and in the commercial sphere as well. So it's kind of a well-tested path to ensure that there is checks and balances across the board, to make sure that there's no kind of one seat of power on that committee, and that there's a range of views and perspectives. The other element to cover is the board appointments panel. So this is the panel that recommends board members, and they screen board members before they're elected or put up for election. And they also do the appointment process for the independent board members. Now, they're a really critical part of our process, and that's comprised of an existing board member to provide context. It's also someone from the Pony Club community, and it's also a member elected appointee. So there's a really good test and a really good filter for the membership to be able to impact the composition of the board, which I think provides variety around the table, but it also provides some really decent safeguards. And ultimately, with a 3-year term, you do have the opportunity to turf people out. I'm up for election this time, so if you're looking to buy me, mount a campaign now so I can get a few hours back in my evening.
Are we going on to the disputes process now?
Mhm.
That'd be great. If you can walk us through, Todd, that'd be awesome.
So one of the key changes with the new Incorporated Societies Act is the requirement in the
Oh, sorry. Touch the mouse.
is the requirement in the Constitution to have a disputes process actually outlined in the Constitution. It's no longer good enough to just have it in separate policies or procedures. It's got to be specific in there. The key thing to note with this disputes process is this is where, and for leading on from the rest of our conversations in here, if there are issues, concerns, disputes around the treatment of or decisions, this is the process that gets raised. Now, the key things in here, we've largely followed the disputes process provided to us by Sport NZ and kept it very similar across these bodies. The key item that differs us from the general Sport NZ is that for Pony Club, we don't feel it's appropriate to have a right of appeal to the Sports Tribunal. Now, that doesn't stop you taking us to court if you wanted to, because we are still covered by our legal responsibilities. And if you feel that those legal responsibilities have been breached, then we can be taken to court. But for the disputes process, for the vast majority of disputes that we have, in the interest of ensuring that we get the best bang for buck for our members and we don't spend it willy-nilly on lawyers, and we act in a timely and fair manner, we've decided that the last layer of appeal at Pony Club of any dispute or concern is to the board. Now, the process that we've got in here largely follows the flowchart we've got. First thing, does it meet the definition of a dispute? So when you've got a dispute, you might not have a dispute, you might have a concern, you might have a query. You've got to have a dispute, and that's legally defined, and it's defined in our Constitution. So then, if it's a no, do we have a procedure for it? So how do we deal with these sorts of issues? If we don't have a procedure for it, should we possibly develop one? And that's a question that comes to the board. Do we need to have a bylaw or a policy to go through? If it is yes, if there is a dispute and the answer is yes, the first thing is the legislation. For example, if it is an employment dispute, that it is covered by the Employment Relations Act, the Contract Act. That's where it will go. It doesn't matter what we say in our Constitution, it will follow the legislation. If it's a dispute on health and safety, it will follow the Health and Safety and Work Act. If it's a dispute on a contract or agreement, it will follow the Commercial Contracts Act. Otherwise, it will look to our existing procedures. So if it's not a legislative one, it goes into we look at to see whether or not we have a existing procedure or a bylaw. So we are looking at developing and growing these. Now, this is one of the key things around why we can't do anything without updating our general regs, because we need to make sure in our general regs that we update our disputes procedures. But if it doesn't have a policy or a procedure, then it follows our Constitution. Now, within our Constitution, there's the key principle in there is the principle of natural justice. This means that we need to be equitable with our treatment. We need to consider all sides of a story. We need to look at all of the facts, and we need to do it in a timely manner. One of the key comments that has come across a lot of issues with our process to date is it takes a long time and it's long-winded, and to be fair, justice delayed is justice denied. So in streamlining this process and clearing up who's involved, in making sure that the board can act quickly on appointing a committee to look at it and appointing specialists to look at it. We hope to be a lot faster and a lot more effective in dealing with these disputes and getting them out and turning them around as quickly as possible. So that's largely an overview of how the dispute resolution process is structured in the Constitution as we've proposed. Well,
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, a really important piece of a constitutional update here. We know that disputes in our organisation can sometimes get dealt with differently across our geographies, and what we aim to do and what we have the opportunity to do with this update is to make sure that there is a clear pathway wherever you are across the country to try and resolve a dispute fairly and swiftly. Okay, Lizzie, I think we'll push on to the next. I don't see any questions on this one. Lizzie, over to you. If you can walk us through 3rd of April today, a year and 2 days time, how the hell are we going to get this done?
So I just need to go back slightly. The board started our first lot on paper as a meeting back in November, but this was even before that. As soon as we were informed that the Incorporated Societies Act would change, we went to many workshops and webinars, and we had to, of course, wait until Sports NZ came up with our first template of what. So they've done a lot of the template work for us. So today, as Will said, we're in April, and we are in our consultation phase. So that started actually back in February when we shared with all of you our draft constitution, and we took it to Area Forum because that was our way to start with areas. So areas could get the information, and then they could communicate that down through to their clubs and to their branches. So for the month of April, we've got webinars and we've got feedback collection. There are more webinars scheduled. There is one more on, I think it's the 16th, and potentially one after Eventing Champs. But if you're at any event where we are, at like Eventing Champs, come and talk to us and ask us those questions, and we'll put them on the frequently asked questions. In May, Kelly and I have been working on some of the modelling. We would like to start with our area region focused webinars. Everyone is welcome to come along to those. So don't just sit there and wait till it's your area's turn. We'll be reaching out to the area presidents and to the clubs and the branches to come up with a time that hopefully suits the majority of you. It will be an evening. And we'll do a lot of modelling. So what could it look like for you? We have got the data of how many are in your clubs without branches and how many in your branches. So there will be discussions there, especially around those clubs that may not at this stage be viable under the Constitution, even today, to continue, and what their options are as well. So that will be the month of May. We'll go into a meeting in June as a board and just see how we're going, make any final changes, and in July it's our finalised constitution. We're hoping for the 1st of July. So feedback is really important from now to around that 5th of June. We have got our AGM on the 3rd of August, and currently all our clubs and our clubs without branches have a constitutional obligation to vote at an AGM. And we would love to see attendance, and we know that you can't all come. We know that some of you haven't budgeted for that or you have no one to come, but we'd really love you to consider it, and I'll do a push for conference later. So we'll be voting. If it's accepted, it will immediately be submitted to the Incorporated Societies, because ours has to be accepted before we carry on. There's no point us carrying on if it's not accepted. We would have to make changes. but Todd has used the Sports NZ template. In September, we'll be drafting the constitutions for that intermediate layer. Okay, it's currently called clusters, but that intermediate layer, be it zones, regions, hubs, and all the clubs. October, we're hoping to release those constitutions out to you, because you will have to, templates released, and you'll have to start drafting them. And November to February, special general meetings in your clubs and clusters or intermediate layers to approve. As soon as you approve it, submit it to us for our approval and checking. And then once that's done, it will be submitted to the Incorporated Society, and the deadline is the 5th of April 2026. Any questions on that?
The key thing I'd want to add in there, when you're getting your templates, one of the big things that we're going to be doing is making sure that it is as easy as possible for you guys to push this through. So we will give you the templates to call the SGM. We will give you the templates of the minutes that need to be passed. We will give you the templates of the Constitution, where ideally all you should need to do is to change the name at the top of it. Everything else should be able to be passed and put through. So we should be writing and drafting it all for you to keep it as simple as possible for you and your members to get this going, get this across the line. It will pretty much follow the national one that you guys are looking at today.
So basically, for those that were in a club or branch, I was in 2011. I was a branch president, and we just did that. We put our name in, we voted on it, we signed it, we dated it, and someone sent it off. And same in 2017, where I think there were some changes. No questions on the timeline? Okay. I'll click to the next one. So basically, so we've got the AGM coming up. All the information is on our website. So it will be sent out. The notice of the actual official notice of AGM goes out tomorrow within the constitutional timeframe. It's the 1st to the 3rd of August. It will be held in Christchurch, as well as the AGM, which you can do a postal vote for if you cannot attend. There will be a national forum on the Friday, and on Saturday and Sunday we are going to be having practical sessions for running your branches and intermediate level clubs clusters. So I know that I was in the health and safety meeting last night, and they have got so many wonderful ideas of workshops they can offer. So they are practical. We're also going to be looking at keynote speakers. We are going to make it the best value we can. And the national forum on the Friday, where normally it's an area forum, but we want people to come along and be part of those discussions. And you'll see there, if you are in Christchurch and you only want to come to the AGM, you can come along for free. We've kept the conference package to be the same as the last few years, or very similar to the last few years, and there are no nominate fees, because we want to see strong representation from all our areas and regions. Find those details on the website. And then the final one is where you can find all of this information. So you can find all of this information on our website by clicking that link there. But if you want to, it's NZPCA Resources 2025 Constitutional Update. And there is also a link to the next webinar, and we'll keep adding those on as the dates come in. No, there's no accommodation for the Thursday night at the venue, because the venue has a conference already. I'm sorry, but we don't start to 10 o'clock on the Friday, and there is a hotel right across the road. But you can email me that later and I'll tell you. I've got a question button which will take you to a form. There's our live, so as answers get answered, that will update questions and answers, and of course our timeline, our video, and our constitutions right down there. So that's where you can find the information. And I'll go to the last page. Oh, not the last.
I wanted you to keep that up. There was a great photo of Will on that while ago, which I thought was really.
I've lost the
I was
last page.
I was just thinking, I don't think I consented to that photo, Lizzie.
I think it's a great photo. I didn't take the photo. That's what the YouTube video decided.
Fair enough.
Sorry, the question and answer page has gone off. So you'll have to sit and look at this page or no page.
Okay. Thanks for that, Lizzie. Good plug for the AGM and the conference. So the AGM is actually kind of the small mechanical part on the last day, and there's actually a lot of goodness in the couple of days before that. A lot of work goes into that, and I know we've had good feedback from the past, and we want to build on that and make sure it's a really valuable get together for our members. So please do go back to your areas, go back to your clubs, talk about getting someone along to that. We've covered a lot of ground in the webinar tonight, and I'm hugely grateful for the number of people that have turned out. Great to see a lot of questions, a lot of engagement. People are interested in this stuff, which is awesome because we're really keen to make sure that this thing is going to work for our members. I will ask now if there's anyone that's super brave that wants to have a bit of a discussion. Feel free to come off mute, post in the chat. We do have a little bit more time left on the clock, but otherwise please feel free to reach out to Lizzie, Chief Exec at NZPCA. Is it .org?
Yes.
Yes, boss. Yes. Okay, good. Maybe we'll pop that in the chat as well. And there's a bunch of resources in here for you to go away and share with your club. The opportunity now is to have a discussion. Otherwise, I think we might call it a night. Question from Erica. Is the intention to eventually make the same constitutional board CE changes at an individual club level after the mergers of much of the districts? Yes, so what we're talking about at the moment is the constitution for the NZPCA organisation, and then when we're clear and have voted on that, constitution templates, which Todd talked about, will be issued, and they'll have to flow through the clubs, intermediates, hubs, whatever is decided at the national level. Those entities will have to be updated. The committee changes, the board and CE changes aren't really relevant at that level, but the committee changes and anything relevant in there will be put into those templates for your use.
The key thing to keep in mind is at each point in this process, so we don't need to decide who or what members of what hub, cluster, region, whatever, at the point. That's not defined in the constitution. That's defined in the general regs, how those areas, how those clubs will group up to the next level up. So that simplifies the process. However, we do need to know at launch what that first layer is going to look like.
Mandy's got her hand up and I've unmuted, allowed her to, she can unmute herself if she wants.
Hello, thank you. I was just going to clarify for Erica because I think the question was not, I'm not sure, Erica, so I'm speaking for you because obviously we chatted offline, but not it's the board, the changing the board and the CE, and if that change happens at the level down, not the constitution. So it might be good, I think, to just clarify that the election doesn't of the committees and stuff doesn't change for the levels underneath the board. Like you only have a CE at the top level.
Yeah. However, the constitutions will change for everyone, and I think that's the key point we want to get across. Is that everybody has to do this. You can't just use your existing constitution. You will have to go through the process of creating a new constitution, and that's what we're going to be helping you. Question from Alice: what will the committee structure of the middle layer look like in terms of required officers? in the way that the Incorporated Societies Act is currently structured, we don't have the officers that we currently have in our committees. So there isn't a treasurer and a president and a vice president. There is a chair and the board, and everybody on there is officers. And this follows the same principles as the Companies Act when it comes to commercial boards. So you don't have an individual who's responsible. They might have some tasks to do because we're a volunteer organisation. So they may be appointed to look after the finances. But from the perspective of who is responsible, every member of that committee / board is responsible going forward. So everybody, as far as the Incorporated Societies registrar is concerned, is an officer. There is no specific officer. You will all be required to have your details on the website for the registrar. And collectively, you will form a committee to make decisions, and you how you allocate those any roles that those that you'll each perform to spread the workload will be up to you guys, but there won't be a formal treasurer or the likes. There will be a chair and the rest of the board.
Marge has a question just popped in as well there, Todd, in the question and answers.
Yep. What are the consequences of the new constitution not being accepted by clubs and or hubs? We cease to exist fundamentally. It doesn't just auto roll over. You have to have a constitution updated and passed that is compliant. Our current constitution is not compliant as it stands with the Act. We are going through the process. The purpose of the consultation as we go through today is to have something that will pass at an AGM. If this is your opportunity, and this is why it's incredibly important, don't be quiet and don't go, oh, I'll just vote it down. If the final decision in here is to not accept the Constitution and the board have done something seriously wrong, we are doing this so that you can raise your issues now. Don't be silent and expect to be able to raise them at the AGM. It is too late. Let's say, look at it from a process perspective. In August, we sit down, you say, okay, we don't like this. Well, what do you expect us to do about it then? We can't go back and rebuild the Constitution and then rebuild all of the areas' constitutions, all of the clubs' constitutions, all of the branches' constitutions. We've got to do that now. So it's incredibly important, and it's incredibly important for you to tell your members, now is the time to make feedback. Now is the time to raise your issues, raise your concerns, to input into the structure, because if you try and leave it till August, it's too late. And as an organisation, we stop. So it's important. It's important this works. At what point in time will clubs with branches become disestablished and individual branches actually become clubs? Hayley, that was your question. You're right. It is when the club constitution is approved. Now, that's not when it's approved by your committee. It's when it's approved by the board. That's what the constitution requires. But as soon as the board rubber stamp it, it is filed with the registrar. And at that point, it's the new entity. Cool. Back on the Q&A. I think this is the most important part of this. Absolutely, Marge, that is. We've got to make sure that everybody's aligned. Now you need to, now's the time for you to feed back and have your voice heard. No, so all committee members are officers under the new Act. That is correct. That is dictated in the legislation. Do we have any more questions? I've sort of rapid fire answered what I've seen. So they all have to sign on. Yes. Is there a negative to the members for that? Potentially, yes, because you do have when you are taking on a committee position, you are taking on the responsibility for that committee. As an organisation and as a national organisation, we do have insurance to protect our committee members. We, as a national office, have policies and procedures to protect our committee members. So when we've looked at this, the feeling is that although you are expected to take risks on, as long as you act within the guidelines and the policies and the procedures of that the board have set out, then you will be protected. Erica, liability as an officer, does the insurance extend to clubs? Yes, we have had confirmation that that is the case. And the key thing, again, is as long as you are complying with the policies and procedures. If you step outside of the policies and procedures, you will not be protected. It is a bit scary, but it's also, to be fair, the way it is now. If you step outside of the policies and procedures around, we have a health and safety policy for a reason. If you fail to follow that health and safety policy, you will be held liable for that. So it really is pretty much, it is just laying out exactly what you're responsible for now. To Marge's point, there is no change from now. It isn't. It's just making it clear to everyone that that is how it works. You have a role to take, and you're taking on a legal obligation. From our side, the biggest thing we can say to you as members, as representatives of Pony Club, if you are concerned about anything or if you're unsure, you speak up and you ask the question, because we can point you in the right direction. If you go off shooting from the hip, you are less likely to be protected, and we are less likely to be able to protect you. We want to protect you. That is why we have these policies. It is why we have the Constitution. It is why we spend as much time as we do arguing over the little words and the little nuances. And the key thing there is to make sure that everybody is covered. How do areas and clubs with branches plan for their season starting in September if the whole structure changes mid-season? Is it accepted as going to be messy? Yes. Lizzie, do you agree with that one? Well,
it will be messy, but at the same time, if you do it as a collective approach in your region area, you're still going to be operational at your branch / club level. So that's where that shouldn't change too much.
And to be fair, for clubs, it shouldn't change anything.
No.
Fundamentally, that's nothing will change on a day-to-day basis for them, because it's still just clear on you're an incorporated society today, you will be an incorporated society tomorrow. There's no change.
I think that's one of the great things about our community is the kind of fiercely passionate people that are behind all the activity that you're talking about, thinking about the season and whatnot. And if we're changing the boundaries in which your administrative layer operates and requiring them to update some documentation and hold an SGM, apart from, a one-time burden in doing that, there should be no real reason why you couldn't continue the natural routine of your Pony Club season. The board and the national org have got some work to do around our national events calendar, but all of that should be maintained as well. So not trying to play down that it won't be messy, it's absolutely going to be. And it's a period of pain that we're going to have to put ourselves through to get compliant and hopefully open ourselves up to some opportunities in the future by releasing one of the structures from the organisation. But ultimately, we shouldn't really put people's season at total risk.
We may have to do a bit of work around area team selections for national events. That's it's going to be something that has to be done anyway.
That's already been done. We're under review. We've at last year's AGM, Eventing Champs is being reviewed. Champs Weeks are being reviewed. We will have change documents. We will have timelines that go into more detail than this.
Well, we're looking at one timeline, but we'll produce another, and we will make it clear that, you know, what is staying, what is going, and ultimately, you know, a number of you will get sick of hearing this presentation, but we will be going around and trying to over communicate on what we're proposing here, and ultimately then getting into execution mode after the AGM, and making sure people are fully equipped with the tools to go out in their areas and get this done, so that we can all get on with what we really want to do, which is pony club activity, kids and ponies having fun.
Okay, we're just on 2 minutes to go. I don't think it kicks us off.
Well, if there's nothing else, I'd like to say thank you for engaging with us on this one, to all the members on tonight. I've appreciated the comments and the feedback and the suggestions. So from me personally, thank you. Well, Lizzie, I'll pass to you.
No, absolutely. And you are most welcome to attend more than one of our webinars. You can keep coming back, keep asking questions, keep sharing. Because as I want to reiterate what Todd said, this is our consultation phase, and we need to know this board meeting on the 5th of June, you can imagine, it's in person, it's going to be mammoth. They're not leaving the room until they're done. No lunch for them.
Quite right. Again, thank you all so much for taking time out of your evening to join us and engage with us. The questions are really heartening, actually. I think the board, Lizzie and I, have been blown away at an awesome turnout on Tuesday. Again, lots of people showing interest tonight. We will keep doing this. We want to keep working with you and refining this so that we get to a really good spot and get this done. Thank you for the board members that joined us tonight. Todd, Dina, Tony, Kelly. I think Simon might have made it, possibly not. But everyone in the background who's been working away. Lizzie, Lorraine, thank you for the work that you do. And yes, thank you everyone. Please share all this with your Pony Club community. Thanks for taking the time tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Absolutely, and it will all be linked later on tomorrow sometime on the website, this video.
That's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.
See you later. Thanks, team. Bye, Lou.